Today we're getting up close and personal with Dr. William Petit, serving his third term as Republican State Representative for the 22nd District, which serves Plainville and New Britain. Thank you so much for being with us today. It's nice to have you. Let's talk about some of your recent initiatives. And I'm thinking first we can talk about the diversity with education.
You're probably talking about the recent press conference we had in New Britain, and that was a program that was really pushed by my colleague Bobby Sanchez, who's the chair of education and a state rep from New Britain, a Democrat, and my ranking member, Kathleen McCarty. And that's essentially to get more folks into the teaching field from underrepresented groups. Because most of us identify in a big way with the teachers that taught us, especially in grade school, junior high, high school. And obviously in grammar schools, there's very few men. In many communities, there's an inadequate number of African Americans and Latino teachers. And this is an initiative to do an apprenticeship, people who may be in other positions now, so they can make the transition to teaching without having to start from ground zero with an AB degree. It's open to people who have degrees already, but allows them on-the-job training, and hopefully will help improve the ranks of those that are underrepresented in the teaching profession.
I was reading that you had said you were in 6th grade, I think, before you had a male teacher. And I asked myself that same question. And I was in 5th grade before I had a male teacher. And what are some of the problems or reasons that we're not getting more diversity in the classroom at earlier ages? Is it recruitment?
I think it's recruitment. I think it's perception. I think most of us have grown up with that K through 6 experience that has mostly been women. Obviously, we see that evolution in a totally different field, nursing, which for years was female, 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 and we're seeing more males, but still predominantly a female field. So I think part of it's perception, what you grow up with. So it actually doesn't even come into your thought process that, hey, I could be a 2nd grade teacher, I could be a 4th grade teacher. So I think it's what people expect. And then role models. I think if you had a role model, you'd be more likely to think, boy, that's something I'd like to do. There's role models in high school and at upper levels, so you see fair
Sports.
Representation at upper levels, but not at lower levels. So I think it's our perceptions of how it should be and modeling, which is critical.
So the teacher residency program is applicants who have a bachelor's degree can apply, and they would act as a mentor in that role for 1 year. Is that what the residency program?
They would act as an apprentice under people at the school that they're assigned to, and basically have on-the-job training for a year.
And see where they'd like to take that. Now, the Connecticut Business and Industry Association, which represents many of the small, medium-sized businesses in Connecticut, just gave you a favorable score for how you voted for business in Connecticut. And I know that there were several session bills that included the truck tax, extending manufacturing apprenticeship tax credit, issues with workers' compensation, et cetera. So do you have discussions with CBIA or businesses on a regular basis as a state representative to see what kinds of things businesses need to keep us going forward?
Well, it happens in several ways. CBA, over the course of a year, hosts a variety of symposia or discussions that reps and senators are invited to hear from experts about an issue and then join in the Q&A period. The same thing is done obviously with local chambers of commerce that CBA participates with as well. And then obviously on a more direct issue, when a specific piece of legislation comes up that affects businesses, CBA often makes appointments and speaks to the representatives or senators that are involved first at the committee level, and then if it gets out of the committee level, the whole, the House and Senate to discuss with people their position and why they think the bill should go forward or should not go forward. So I think there's a variety of ways for that to occur.
Now, in order to directly talk to your constituents, you and Senator Martin have set up what you call Coffee and Conversation, and it's a regularly scheduled venue. You hold it in a public place in Plainville, and is that done on a monthly basis, or yeah? And has that been successful? Has that been a way to interact with folks?
I think in 2017, 18, and 19, it was very successful. We held probably 3/4 morning sessions and about 1/4 evening sessions. Since basically about 85% of my district is Plainville, they were mostly in Plainville. We had a handful in New Britain as well. My district includes the west side of New Britain running down Slater Road, which is mostly residential. Obviously fell apart to a degree during the pandemic in 20 and 21. We've had a couple of follow-ups since then, and hopefully things stay stable. We'll be able to go monthly again starting in January. We usually do the second or third Tuesday of the month. We seem to get the good attendance at the morning sessions, which are typically 8 a.m., and then we'll probably do one at 6 or 6:30 in the evening, maybe every quarter, for the people who can't get to the morning sessions. And they're helpful. They attract sometimes 8 or 10 people, and when there's big issues out there, sometimes 30, 40, 50 people. Gives people a chance to talk, ask questions about a variety of issues. So I think they've been very helpful, and again, really have just fallen by the wayside since we weren't able to gather and places were closed, and then people have their concerns if they're immunocompromised and whether they want to be around a group of people in a contained space.
So Dr. Petit, do you have an agenda that you follow, or you open the floor and you allow the people that are attending to ask questions about things that are important to them or things that they want to know, or a little of both?
Yeah, both. Henry, Senator Martin and I, Senator Martin, Plainville's part of the 31st District, and we have an agenda in the back of our heads if there's not many questions, and sometimes people have 1 or 2 issues they want to talk about, and it takes the entire hour and we don't get to our agenda. We sort of hold it if we need it, and we may mention it at the end. Sometimes it's a quiet time between controversial bills and things, and people just want to know what's going on, and we'll start with our agenda and say, hey, we think this is going to be an important issue, and start to discuss. So a little of both.
At this time of year, before this next session begins, what are some of the things that you're doing? Is there still, so many people think that when the session is not, when we're not in session, that nothing's really going on. But in fact, there's a lot that's usually going on. Are you hearing about bills that people are looking to raise? Of course, this time we're going into a short session, where the committees have to actually raise the bills that are going to be going forward and looked at. So what is happening usually at this time of year?
Quite a few meetings. I have been, the meetings that go on a regular basis. For instance, I'm a member of the HITAC, the Health Information Technology Advisory Council, talking about electronic medical records and medical information. I'm a member of a long-term care finance committee that deals with nursing homes and payments and the business end of nursing homes. Your viewers probably saw the Hartford Courant article about a month ago talking about the crisis in mental health for children, and children being held in emergency rooms for far longer than they should be because of lack of access to beds and appropriate care for them. So we had a public hearing about 3 weeks ago, actually in person up at the Capitol, brought a number of people in from agencies, hospitals, et cetera, in the mental health fields to tell us what they think they needed. And we've now broken down into subcommittees. I'm on a couple of those subcommittees, and we've been meeting weekly, typically by Zoom. It's easier with people from all parts of the state instead of forcing people to drive into Hartford to do it. And we're trying to discuss what we can do in either a special session before we go in February or during the session to try to improve access to mental health care for everyone, but especially for children. So there's a lot of discussions, and we're talking with social workers and psychiatrists and psychologists and the 501c3s, the organizations that help with this care, as well as the state agencies that are involved, the Department of Social Services, DEMIS, Public Health, et cetera. So a lot of meetings going on.
How has that changed through the COVID pandemic? Because I know as a business, our meetings are held via Zoom now. I find that very successful. I find that I can see people's faces closer up. I worried about some of the interactions that you experience when you're meeting one-on-one, but with Zoom, you can really kind of see someone close up and get a feel for the conversation and where they're going. It's been a time saver because we don't have to run from place to place to place. So I've been able to fit in more meetings than I used to be able to fit in. But at the Legislative Office Building, there's been big changes in how you do business, a lot with lobbying, with you talking with other representatives or senators about an issue. Can you speak about that for a little bit?
Well, I think it's probably been, a lot of it's been the same experiences businesses have had. I think there's the ability to schedule more meetings, because if you just need 45 minutes, you can schedule it at 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and people can be in four corners of the state and hop on and go to their other things. They have to be in person or go to their work, as this is not a full-time job, so people have jobs they have to get to. So I think that's allowed for more meetings. I think we've lost something in that when we're all up at the LOB, the Legislative Office Building, the interaction, the casual interactions in the hallways, in the cafeterias, being able to walk over and talk to someone in person for 5 minutes about an issue has been, obviously you can call people, you can FaceTime people, and that goes on. And I think it's probably, you have to have the lobbyists come in and talk about it, but I think it's impacted a lot of what they end up doing is casual conversations when they're in the building, and you see them in the hallway, you see them outside of a committee room, you see them in the cafeteria, and they bring up an issue. Now they have to call you or email you and set up an appointment. So a lot of that, from both sides, legislator to legislator, legislator to constituent, legislator to lobbyist, a lot of the casual interactions have gone away, and things have to be scheduled, which has probably had some impact on it.
Is that going to change?
I hope so. I think we should be back in person. Obviously, the thing we didn't talk about, say the public hearings, which I think many of the same pros and cons. It's you don't have, when it's on Zoom, you can find out where you are in the queue, and you can be at your house and doing what you need to do, taking care of your kids, taking care of an elderly parent, whatever the situation you're in is, and know about when your time has come, as opposed to having to drive to Hartford and sit up there for 6, 8, 10, 12 hours to testify. I think it loses a little impact. I think the physical impact of someone being in the well and testifying to the committee, I think it loses some impact when it's not in person.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully we can get back to that. And let's talk a little bit about your vote against House Resolution 202, which was the one where Governor Lamont wanted to extend his executive order. And that was a vote that you had voted in opposition of that. Tell us some of the reasons why you felt that was important to have those executive orders stop.
Well, the no vote was not so much because I thought the executive order should stop, but the no vote was because I thought, people like yourself, Joni, should have a voice. When the governor's solely in charge. You can contact me and say, I agree or disagree with this policy, and then I can reach out to the governor's staff. But in the end, it's the governor with a small group of people that end up making the decision. There's obviously some efficiencies in that versus attempting to convince 151 people in the House or 36 people in the Senate. But you lose to some degree your representation. And we're supposed to have a representative government, the executive branch, legislative branch, judicial branch. And I thought that we could, after the first 6 months or so, I thought we could go forward, keeping executive orders in force that we felt were appropriate and doing the right things. So it wasn't just a willy-nilly get rid of all of them, but allow people to weigh in and discuss the executive orders or decisions that they disagreed with. May not, in the end run, we'll never know, may not have changed much at all. When all people looked at all the data, people may have agreed with most of it, but they may not have, but it would have given you a more direct voice, and that's how our government's intended to work. So it was really on that basis, wanting to give my constituents a more direct voice, the ability to voice their concerns to someone who represents them, and I could represent it to the appropriate committee that was, say, involved with that decision making.
Right. Dr. Petit, you're on 3 committees, currently the Public Health Committee, Education Committee, and E&T, Energy and Technology Committee. You mentioned a few minutes ago that this is a part-time job. This is not a full-time job, but I don't understand how the amount of time that you have to spend in these committees with the various issues. And I just want to read a few of the things that you dealt with during the last session to give folks an understanding of the various matters that you have to be up on in order to make appropriate decisions. So addressing the opioid epidemic, mental health exam as part of a person's annual physical. I mean, that's a no-brainer, you would think. That should be heat illness for coaches, heat illness education, so they know what to do. Newborn infant health screening, global positioning, and other technologies in order to track drug overdoses. Data privacy breaches. Then we go over to auto theft cases, which we've heard a lot about recently with juveniles, instead of going to the juvenile court system to go into the criminal docket. Recruitment of physicians to the state, crumbling concrete foundations. So, you know, we've got human trafficking, term limits for legislators, online hate and harassment. I mean, there are so many variables to each one of those things. And this, I've just read a small scope of what you had in front of you during the last session. What is the most difficult part as a legislator to immerse yourself in a matter and be able to make a decision about that?
It's difficult. Obviously, as a physician, you know, I've trained since 1978, so 40 plus years for a lot of the issues that come up in the Public Health Committee. Obviously, I was in the educational system from pre-K through my fellowship, so that was about 29 years. So I have some inkling of that. Energy and technology was, you know, a sort of a new field and very, very technical. I don't want to get us off course here, but yeah, I agree with your sort of the premise you're putting out there. I think state government's gotten more complicated. I think we should go to a much smaller full-time legislature, maybe unicameral structure like a place like Nebraska has, but I don't think there's any appetite for that at this point. I also put in bills a couple of times starting in 17, my first term, for term limits of 8, 10, 12 years so that you can continually renew, see this as a service job. There's something to be said for institutional memory and people having experience, and whether or not it's to our advantage to have people in positions for 20, 30, 40 years remains to be seen. It's in the eye of the beholder. So yeah, I think it's become a full-time job, and actually I was incredibly busy during the pandemic in 20 when we went out in March, about March 15th or whatever it was of 2020, especially with public health, and at that point still the appropriations committee at that point. I was probably on 20, 25 hours of Zoom calls a week between nursing home issues, vaccine issues, what we were going to do in terms of masks, the personal protective equipment, what was happening in the nursing homes, how we were going to get providers in there. It was really 50, 60, 70-hour-a-week job during the pandemic. Yes, sitting in front of the computer with Zoom meetings because they were all Zoom. That's slowed a little bit, and we're getting a little closer back to normal, though we still haven't spent much time up at the Capitol. I think a lot of people don't understand that as a part-time legislature, in a budget year, we're in from the first week in January to the first week in June. And then in the non-budget year, we're in from the first week in February to the first week in May. So that it's not like, so that's whatever that works out to be 10, 11 months out of 24 where you can officially submit a bill. The other times you can't. You have to get a special session called and have public hearings in between, which is a difficult hoop to jump through.
So you really do have to spend a lot of time educating yourself because you're going to have to make a decision. And in order to do that, you have to have the facts. And though the health and the education, you have an excellent foundation for, which is a natural extension for you, is helpful. There's still so many other variables, and you have to listen to what the folks that you represent have to say too about an issue.
No, yeah, to get to your point, yeah, your constituents educate you. It's an energy issue, it's a solar issue. People in the solar industry talk to you. As a constituent, their lobbyists talk to you. You get sent information. You can send requests to the Office of Legislative Research and get a summary of a specific topic sent to you.
You have aides that are helpful.
You have
shout
aides
out to the aides.
Yeah, shout out to the aides and interns at times. There's a small number of interns, and sometimes you can have an intern. And you also, just in your own caucus, you rely on your ranking member, or if you're in the majority party, the chairs and the vice chairs, to share information with you, because they're the people driving the train, and they say, well, listen, here's the background. So Charlie Farrar is my ranking member on energy and technology, so I listen to what Charlie has to say. Holly Cheeseman's very adept at this, Tim Ackert in the electrical field, so I listen to my colleagues and let them educate me on these issues, and just like they come to me and ask for advice on public health issues, and I try to give them the benefit of my experience with public health issues.
Yeah, good to work together that way. Essential to work together that way. We have about 3 minutes left. Can you tell us some of maybe concerns or issues that you have in mind going forward 2022?
Well, obviously the one that's taken up the most news time on TV and social media and elsewhere is the juvenile justice issues. Craig Fishbein, the ranking member on judiciary, has been making the rounds recently nearby in Bristol. Did a presentation about a month ago with the police present and a number of legislators talking about things that need to be considered for the next year. When do we consider a juvenile and put him into the adult system? Do we use global tracking after the second arrest? Fingerprinting, being able to hold juveniles for a certain period of time until previous records are available, so you don't let someone else and they go back to write what they were doing because you didn't have access to their records. And there's probably a dozen other issues. So I think that's number one. People still want to go back to the police accountability bill that got pushed through in the summer of 2020. There's about a year's worth of data now to see what's working in the police accountability bill and what's not working, what needs to be changed. I think there's a financial concern in that there's a lot of federal funds coming in, which is nice. Remember, there are tax dollars, be they federal or otherwise, and we want to be sure that if we start a program, then it's able to be self-sufficient once the federal funds go away, that we're not creating a hole for ourselves where we're going to fall behind where we start something up and we don't have a funding stream to care for it.
Right.
Obviously, the disaster in West Haven in terms of the misappropriation of money, and we have some issues. I know some of the CARES Act audits are just about finalized now, and there's issues in terms of looking at ARPA and other monies to make sure that the federal money has been spent appropriately. That's going to be a concern. We've heard a lot about supply chain issues. You brought up small businesses. There's concern. I think we're going to hear more about trying to repeal the highway use tax. There's so much federal funds coming in terms of shoring up our issues with road maintenance, bridges and the like. We need to stabilize the Special Transportation Fund. We've advocated for a number of years. The Special Transportation Fund is the only fund where the benefits of employees is within that fund. All the other agencies in the state of Connecticut, their benefits are housed under the general fund. So one of the things that makes the Special Transportation Fund struggle is that they're paying, that budget is not just repairing roads and bridges and new construction, it also has to do with benefits. So it's a little bit of an accounting issue, but it would make the bottom line look dramatically better, and there'd be a lot less stress and a lot less push to add yet another tax in terms of gases or the highway mileage tax.
So we can see that there's already so much in your mind about going forward for 2022. You're already launching into that. And as we end here, what's the best way for constituents to get in touch with you and discuss something important to them or their business? You have a great Facebook page. I see people interact with you there, and you interact back. Is that the best way?
The best way is email william.petit at housegop.ct.gov or william.petit@cga.ct.gov. There's phone numbers on the Facebook page. The aides are excellent. Many of the aides all have contacts at all the agencies, so they're often able to reach out, and they often resolve problems before they even talk to us, because they've been doing it for years and they know the system, so they often can help people before they even have to reach out to us.
Yeah, well, we recognize that your time is valuable. We thank you for coming in. And we also recognize that Dr. Petit is one of the legislators that really cares about what we have to say and what we think as he goes to Hartford with works on some of these issues. So attend these coffee and conversations, reach out and email him, look at Facebook, and if you don't have access to broadband or know how to use your computer, you certainly can make a phone call, and someone on his staff will get the information to him, and he can get back in touch with you. So thank you so much for coming in today. It was great to see you.
Appreciate it.
All right, we'll see you next time on Up Close and Personal.